Hey everyone, thank you for joining back into the Crypto Ods. Please give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Today, I want to talk about the S&P 500 and Bitcoin and what happened at the end of the previous cycle, how the market behaved when we reached the final days and saw the top. If you look at the Bitcoin chart at the previous cycle, when we topped on the 15th November, the same thing happened on the S&P 500, and then we dropped until the early December. As I mentioned that last night video, we can have a really rally in December. In December 2021, we had a weak upside move on the S&P 500. You see here, this one. And Bitcoin basically moved sideways. You see here. In December, the Bitcoin moves sideways. But at the beginning of the January 2022, here, the January 2022, the S&P 500 started a deeper correction and entered the bear market. First in November, we touched the 20 weeks moving average on the S&P 500. Then we made a very weak higher high here. And in the 2022, we entered the bear market. But Bitcoin acted differently. In November, it began a correction together. In November 15, the Bitcoin and S&P 500 had a correction. But in December, it didn't show any kind of rebound. It just moved sideways. Then in January 2022, we got the bottom, the Bitcoin. And they are decoupled and started to pulling back toward our weekly 50 weekly moving average. Here we got the bottom at the January in Bitcoin, but in January 2022 our S&P 500 got the top, the weaker top, and then it start to bleeding. It start to bleed it. Let's go back to the present 2025. We saw our top in October 6. If we are got our top in October 6, and then Bitcoin began a correction, but the S&P joined the correction 20 days later. Here, 27 October. We got the top in Bitcoin in 6 October, but in S&P in 27 October, 21 days later. We pulled back on the weekly 20 moving average here at the end of the November until the end of the November. And its last week of the November, it started to move upward. I expected that in December, similar to the previous cycle, we may turn bullish. But in this rally, Bitcoin seems to be aligning and converging with the S&P. if the S&P behaves like it did in the previous cycle and we touch a slightly higher top, let's take this pattern here. You can see that if such a scenario plays out, this means that similar in the previous cycle, we might enter a deeper correction on the S&P in January 2026. Since Bitcoin experienced the drop earlier than the S&P 500, it's possible that, unlike the previous cycle where Bitcoin started its pullback to the moving average in January, and here in January, in last cycle in January, we got the first bottom, and then we are pulled back to our 50 weeks moving average. So this cycle, due to earlier correction, Bitcoin may now be synchronizing with the S&P 500. So we might see that pullback already in December. We can get that pullback in December. Although if you check the weekly RSI in the Bitcoin, you can see that we have a major bearish divergence coming from the top, that trend line, I mean, and at the same time we have formed a hidden bullish divergence here at this bottom. This could easily push upward, up toward the 102k or 104k, like here. At this level. From my perspective, if everyone has been fooled and the bullish trend continues, we could even head toward 150k. For me, confirmation of this scenario would be if we daily candle above it. But for now, I see this move as a pullback, similar to what happened in the fractal of the previous S&P cycle. And on the S&P, we also have a major uptrend in our major bearish uptrend in our weekly RSI, and we are close to that. Each time prices has touched this level of the RSI, the market corrected based on that. I expect we may see a slightly higher high in like this level, 69,000 or 7045 range, 7045, similar to the pattern I've overlaid. Next month is the most essential month. We have to analyze the Bitcoin more carefully so we can make more informed decision.